Bismillah, alhamdulillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. My name is Aqil Ingram, and today I would like you to know what you should expect your first day or your first days in the Islamic University of Madinah. As for how I got accepted in the Islamic University of Madinah, you can find that in a previous video that we did on that topic. But for myself, at this point, and of course I'm only speaking to my experience, when it is time for me to leave, to get on the flight, to go to Medina, I leave out from JFK Airport in New York, and we fly into Jeddah. And if I recall it being about a 12-hour flight. So we fly Saudi Air. It's nice and comfy, excellent. You see there's a musalla there in the back for you to pray, and regardless of where the plane is facing, there's a screen that tells you where the qibla is. You get real food on your flight, and there are all types of maps and different gadgets and things on the screen in front of you, so you can be very familiar and very comfortable and be aware of exactly where you're going, how far you're along, where you're going to land at, thus and so. You land in Jeddah. When you get to Jeddah, there are some customs things that you have to go through, just like you would expect with any country. So you do that, and you have a student visa in your passport, so they check you out, they stamp you in, you go through your process, and now you have to take a second flight. Your second flight is from Jeddah to Medina. And when you arrive in Medina, and at least this was the case for me, there was a person appointed from the Islamic University of Madinah waiting there for me with a sign to receive me. And I was very gracious for that. Now, in my experience, it just so happens that I had some friends from my area, 3 of them in fact, that had been accepted in the Islamic University of Madinah a year prior to me. And 2 of those friends were living together in an apartment, and I had an agreement with them that I would live with them in that same apartment, and this apartment is off campus. So when I arrive in Medina, my friends are there as well, and they speak to the gentleman who was ever so kindly and patiently waiting for my arrival, that I will be going with them, and we go. Now, when we're driving through, mind you, I'm 18 years old at this time. This is my first time this far away from home. I've never been in a country like this before. All of these things are new to me, all of it. And my first experience going into the city of Medina, driving through as we got to our area, you see on this highway, you see the Prophet's Masjid in the backdrop. And when I arrived, it was right around the time of Isha or so. I remember it being dark around that time. And you see the lights and you see the pillars, and it just looks amazing as you're driving through. And as we drive through the city, eventually we get to the area where the apartment was. I had no idea what to expect. The area that I lived in Medina, in the apartment that I was living in with my 2 friends that were friends of mine from back home in New Jersey, and they were there with one British brother as well, right? So altogether there were 4 of us in this apartment. We lived in an area called Hayy Nasr. And Hayy Nasr, the best way that I can describe it is that it felt a little rough. And it felt like I was going backward in time somewhat. And not from the standpoint that people were living in some uncivilized fashion, but I wasn't used to seeing, sand and dust on some of the roads, some of the roads not being fully complete, but the main roads being complete. Looking at some of the buildings, and some of the brick is not finished out, and other buildings are completely finished out. You have these new stores next to these older looking stores, and it just didn't quite fit what I was used to. But I was very grateful. And entering into Hayy Nasr And settling, I mean, I felt a sense of peace. I felt a sense of belonging. And all fear just dissipated from me. And I just felt comfortable. I remember feeling like that. And now that we're settled, the next thing that eventually will happen as you go through the night into the morning is that you hear the adhan. And it's not just in adhan that you hear adhans, plural, for the salah. And of course you set your alarm clocks and things like this, but it's almost like the adhans themselves can be enough to wake you up, right? And that was a new experience for me. I mean, just going back and forth to the masjid, walking back and forth to the masjid. So now your prayer and going to the masjid is a part of your day that doesn't take up too much of your time, and it's not an entire event. What I'm used to in the West and in America is that when you're going to the masjid, I mean, you really have to go to the masjid with intent. You have to drive to get there, 20, 30 minutes, an hour, depending on where you live at. And then once you did all of that to get there, now you're going to stay for some time. I mean, it's an entire event that you have to kind of prepare yourself for, and you get used to that too. But now this isn't that. Just in the neighborhood where you live, within 5 minutes or less walking distance, there is at least one, if not multiple, masajid that you can go to. And as you move throughout the city, there's always a masjid 10 minutes or less from wherever you're at. You go into the mall, there is a supermarket, or there is a musalla. There's a musalla in the mall with an imam to lead the salah inside of the mall. There's an area for that. So in any regard, this was kind of my feel of this new experience in Medina. But eventually it's time for me to go to school. So we go to school, the brothers take me there, we take a cab over there, and we come to these gates. The university has these large gates, right? And there's a guard there, and you show your ID, or they might just recognize you as a student and go ahead and tell you to go through, whatever it may be. Or maybe you might get out at the gate and walk through, whatever you're going to do. So in any regard, what happens when I first get to the university, it's not like you start school right away. What happens is you get processed in. And you're getting processed in. I remember, I can't tell you what particular order, but I do remember one of the first things that happened was that there was an extensive medical examination that took more than one day to go through. And these examinations were quite similar to the medical exams that were just required of me that I did in America before I traveled over here. I was doing many of the same exams over again. And I recall x-rays, I recall eyesight, I recall just a full makeup. I recall your blood type and blood work. I just recall a full makeup of things. And you get this medical card, right? At that time, it was a paper medical card that they had given me with some information on there, your blood type and things like that you're meant to kind of carry around with you. Now, we do that. I also recall that there were two buildings. There were two buildings that we're kind of going back and forth to. There is acceptance and administration building, and there is the building of student affairs. And you're going back and forth between these buildings. You're getting set up for your housing, because on the university campus, there are dorms that are there. As I stated, I did not stay in the dorms, and in hindsight, I believe that was an error. I'll explain that in a minute. But I didn't stay in the dorms. I stayed off campus in an apartment. So they're setting you up for your dorm rooms. They're setting you up for your food, your access to the restaurant. They're setting you up for your iqama, your residency card. Think about how we have a green card in America. The iqama or the residency card is similar to that. And you give them your passport, and then they give you your iqama. They have to prepare it and such, and then they'll release it to you. So you get this temporary card until your actual iqama, your actual residency card, comes back from the government and such. So you do that, right? And that's a whole nother story there. The first year that I was there, I never received my iqama until after Hajj, right? But that's a story we can save for another time. So you're doing that, and you're going through all of this setup. So once you get processed in through all of these different things, then eventually you have to go for testing. And the testing is now, it is a placement assessment for you. And it's an Arabic assessment because we are non-Arabs. We are from an English-speaking country. We are from a non-Arabic speaking country. So you're assessed. And I recall when it was time to take this assessment, what I did was I went into the assessment, went into the examination room. The professor is there. He hands you a paper. At the time that I'm in school, we're doing everything with physical paper and writing and things like that. And the only thing that I did was I wrote my name at the top of the paper. I left everything else blank. I got up, handed the professor the test, and he looked at me, I looked at him, and I went ahead and walked out. Now, the purpose of this assessment was to determine what level of the Arabic program I'll be entering into. And I don't advise anyone to do what I did. I believe that was also an error. Now, the way the Arabic program is set up is that there are 4 levels in the Arabic program. At the time that I was there, it was called the Shu'ba. The Shu'ba Ta'lim al-Lughat al-Arabiyya. It was called the branch of learning the Arabic language. And then during the time that I was there, they changed it from Shu'ba to Mahad. Mahad Ta'lim al-Lughat al-Arabiyya. The Institute of Learning the Arabic Language. Now, there are 4 primary levels. There is one potential auxiliary level during the time that I was there, but there are 4 primary levels in the Arabic program. In the first level of the Arabic program, which is your first semester, there are 5 courses that we take. In the second level of the Arabic program, there are 10 courses that we take. In the third level of the Arabic program, there are 13 courses that we take. And then in the fourth level of the Arabic program, there are, again, another 10 courses that we take. And depending on kind of how you arrive, and also if you fail or not, depending on how the semesters fall, it's possible that you may end up doing a 5th level as a placeholder auxiliary level until you enter into the faculty of your choice. And we'll get to all of that discussion, inshallah ta'ala. The point here, though, is I believe that my just writing the name on that test and passing it back was an error. Now, the reason why I did this was due to an understanding that many of us students had at that time, that we wanted to prolong the amount of time that we had in the Islamic University of Madinah, and we also wanted to prolong the time that we had to benefit from scholarship within the prophetic city of Medina. So we're looking at time, okay? Now, myself at this point in time, when I'm getting to the university, in the United States, I had already studied what we call Medina Book 1. I had studied it several times with a few different teachers and on my own. I also had some studies of what we call Medina Book 2. I say what we call Medina Book 2 because that's not their actual name. We'll get to that as well. Just keep hanging on. So the point is that I knew that if I took this test and I filled it out, that I definitely would test out of level 1 of the Arabic program, and I potentially would test out of level 2 of the program just by me taking that test. So what that means is I would not be beginning the Islamic University of Medina in the first level of the Arabic program, and possibly not in the second level of the Arabic program. So I will be starting either at level 2 or level 3 of the Arabic program, which in my mind at that time as an 18-year-old, that means I have less time in Medina to benefit while I'm here. Now, here is the error. The error is that we're not necessarily guaranteed a long period of time in Medina. We don't know what's going to happen. Someone could get sick. You can have responsibilities back home that you need to return to. I mean, anything can really happen. So you have to get the maximum benefit that you're able to get during the time that you're there. And there are certain levels of knowledge that you cannot access unless you raise your level of knowledge. And once you raise your level of knowledge, your level of understanding is increased. And also the access to other peoples of knowledge on a higher level or interacting with them on a higher level is possible now in ways that you can't on a lower level of the program. So, okay, you have more time, but you don't necessarily have the level of access to reach the high level of knowledge that you're looking to achieve anyway. So in fact, what happens is if you enter into the Islamic University of Madinah on the level that you actually are, due to the barakah, due to the blessing, and due to the advanced level of access and opportunity, even though you may be there for a shorter period of time, potentially, you can gain much more by the permission of Allah and with the assistance of Allah if you just move at the level where you actually are. So hopefully that makes sense. Whether that would have been like in my case, starting either at the second or the third level of the Arabic program, or testing out of the Arabic program in entirety and just entering straight into the faculty of your choice, right? And now really benefiting at a high level because now you're speaking about the bachelor's program and eventually entering into either the one-year diploma program after your bachelor's or going into the master's program, okay? And of course, what you're going to get at the bachelor's level of the Islamic University of Madinah in the diploma program, the one-year diploma program in the Islamic University of Madinah, or at the master's level or at the doctoral level, all of that is much more beneficial for you than what you're going to get by spending another semester, possibly, or year in the Arabic program, right? Now, there are some people who, they want to focus on their Quran and prepare themselves for their Quran, or there are some people that they think they need more time to benefit from their Arabic and things like that, and that may be true. That may be true, but the way that we learn and the way that we grow is that we have to push up and push through. So we think it's going to be so hard when we get to that next level, but every level that you matriculate upward, then suddenly the previous levels, you comprehend them more, quite possibly, than you were when you were in that particular level or in that particular previous course, right? This is the matriculation process. This is the growth process. This is how you attain wider and deeper understanding by continuing to move forward and move upward. So hopefully this makes sense. So that's what I did. Okay, if you choose to do that for yourself, you choose to do that for yourself. I wouldn't necessarily advise it in hindsight now that I can look back. And what happens is now that we do our assessments, you get assigned your classes and things of this nature, what classroom that you're going to be in, you go to class. So I get to my first day of class, and my teacher in the first day of class, his name is Sheikh Nasir Al-Umri. May Allah preserve him if he is still living with us, and may Allah bestow mercy upon his soul if he has passed away. Now, this was my first teacher that I had the first day that I'm actually in school. We had 5 courses in my first semester. And what we typically call Medina Book 1, we think that's all you're studying that first semester. And we think what we call Medina Book 2 is all you're studying in the second semester. And we think what we call Medina Book 3 is what we're studying in the third and the fourth semester. And while we do study these books, it's not limited to these books at all. Rather, these books are just one of several books that we study on each level of that particular program. Now, what we have and what we call the Medina books here in English in the West, in the United States, in Canada, in Britain, thus and so. You know, you go to the back, there's this English key there. So if you get stuck going through the Arabic, you can look to the back of the book and see the English and kind of work it through. That's not it, okay? That's not it. This is my original course book from my first semester in the Islamic University of Madinah. This is Medina Book 1, as we call it. Its actual name is Tadribat, okay? The subject matter is called Tadribat. This is the book. Of course, now, so many years later, the front cover is gone and it's kind of worn through, right? The back cover's gone too at this late date. But just flipping through the pages here, you can see there's no English in here at all. There's no English in this book. We didn't get any English, right? There's no English in here. And why is that? Well, the reason for that is, in my first semester, I was the only American in my class. There were 30 of us in my class. And I recall there being 3 gentlemen from China. One of them, his name was Uthman, and Uthman had such a beautiful recitation of the Quran. He didn't know Arabic, just like I didn't know Arabic like that yet. But when he would recite the Quran, you didn't hear any accent at all. He sounded just like a Sheikh Abdurrahman al-Sudais, hafidhahullah ta'ala. It was amazing how he would recite. We would, when we were doing Quran, we would love to wait for his turn so that we can hear him recite. We had 2 gentlemen from France. Of course, they're speaking French. I remember a gentleman from Afghanistan in the classroom. We had people from West Africa in the classroom. People from all over the world were in this classroom. So even if the professor spoke English, of which he did know a little bit of English, it wouldn't have benefited anyone else in the classroom other than me, because no one else speaks English. The only possible central language to speak is the Arabic language. So you're going to say, well, if you don't know Arabic and one is only speaking Arabic, well, how are you going to learn Arabic? And being honest, there is a bit of sink or swim that's there. There's a bit of that's there. However, the teachers are professionals and they are taught to interact with us on the level that we are. So they're speaking Arabic to us, but they're not speaking the most advanced level of Arabic that one can speak. Sheikh Nasir al-Umri would say things like, هذا تفاح, holding up an image of an apple. So if he's stating هذا تفاح, holding up an image of an apple, okay, you get an idea, whatever he's talking about, it must have something to do with an apple. Maybe this word tufah that he's saying means apple. Okay, let me park that in my head, okay? And once you get to the next level, level 2, then they graduate their level of Arabic, level 3 more, level 4 more, and then you're in your faculty that you have chosen of specialization and expertise. Now, in the first semester, we had 5 courses that we took. We're going to explain to you what those 5 courses are today. The first one is the work that we were speaking about. This subject here is called Tadribat. Tadribat, okay? Tadribat, what we call Medina Book 1. This focuses on Arabic grammar, vocabulary, and getting you familiar with the Arabic language. That's what this book does. And it does a good job at it, in my humble opinion. You know, a lot of people think that it's overly simplified and things like this, right? For example, if you go to the see, my pages are even ripped now, right? It's been so long, and actually this was white at one time. I don't know if you see it on the screen, but it's kind of browned over, right? But if you go to the first page of the book, you're going to see a very simple format on the first page of this book here. And even some of my original notes, as you go through these books, I used to take my notes inside of the book itself, which is a skill set that you learn as a student of knowledge, to take your notes inside of the book, right? We'll talk about note taking in another session, but my handwriting is here and there. My notes are throughout the book, but you see these images here, right? You see these images here, and it's very simplistic. هذا بيت. هذا مسجد. This is a house, this is a masjid. And people think it's overly simplistic, like how you're learning Arabic like this. Dr. Fa Abdurrahim, may Allah bestow expansive mercy upon the Sheikh as he's recently passed away. He has his own story. Please look up his biography. He is the father of the Institute of Learning the Arabic Language in the Islamic University of Madinah. He is the one that has authored the base of all the 40 books that we study in the Arabic program. But what he does is he places a lot of grammar and morphology, a lot of nahu and sarf inside of these books. All we see here is hadha baytun, but there's a lot that's here. So then he leaves it to the teacher to decide to what level of depth the teacher wants to go into based on the need of the student, okay? And this is how we are learning the Arabic language. So it's immersion, and it's the professors appropriating what we need based on what is present in front of us. So we see hadha baytun, but really, you're going to learn about an ism, a fi'l, and a harf, right? You're going to learn about a noun, a verb, and a preposition, right? You're going to learn about different categorizations of that, right? Ismul ishara, hadha is a certain type of noun, a noun that is pointing to something. You're going to learn that there are words that are on patterns, and if you can identify the pattern that a word is on in the Arabic language, then without you even looking up the word, you already know, based on the pattern it's on, this is the one that did the action. This is the one that the action was done to. This is a noun. This is a verb, right? Thus and so. This is a device, an instrument that's being utilized to do something. Just based on the pattern, you're going to know how to pronounce it, and you're going to have an idea about how to spell it, right? So you're getting into all of this, right? You're getting into all of this. You're even getting to the idea of understanding that every word in the Arabic language generally has a root word. And generally, that root word will be a 3-letter past tense verb. So then once you learn these different patterns, it's called sarf morphology, that's that field. So let's say you learn 10 patterns, right? You got crazy, right? There are hundreds of them. But let's say you got crazy and you learn 10 of these patterns, right? 10 of these ozan, as it were. Then whatever root word you learn, you can apply that root word to the 10 patterns that you learned. So you're not learning one word at a time like we do in English, but rather you're learning 10 words at a time now. You're learning exponentially in your vocabulary because you can apply every root word that you learn to all 10 patterns, and that's going to be 10 different words, for example, right? So there's a lot that's here. That's this subject, tadribat. We also have a subject that is called ta'bir. Ta'bir. This work is called durusun fit ta'bir. And ta'bir, it is expression, articulation. It's learning how to talk. That's what ta'bir is. And I don't know if you all can see it in the screen, but these are my original books from the university. So my notes, these are my handwritten notes that are still here. And likewise, throughout the book, right, you can see my handwritten notes, hopefully, right, from when I was in class at that time. But in any regard, right, these exercises that we were doing at that time. So we begin learning how to speak, right, how to express ourselves. And I can say for myself, that was one of the most challenging shifts for me, because my first 2 weeks in Medina, one of the professors in the Islamic University of Madinah, Sheikh Abdul Hadi, he invited us over to his home. And we came to his home. It was right around Maghrib time. I forget whether it was before Maghrib or after Maghrib, but I think it was after Maghrib that we arrived at his home. And we're sitting, and he's got tea and dates and things like that. And I was a new student. Some of the students have been there a little bit longer than me and things like that. So the sheikh had some interest in me and giving me the salam, and he was asking my name. I told him my name is Aqil. He said Aqil. I said, hey, you are, right? Which is slang, right? Like saying like, yeah. So the sheikh started laughing, speaking to some of the his other guests that were there with him. He said, it's been 2 weeks and he's already speaking slang. Look at this, right? because it's something that was kind of looked down upon. We're supposed to be learning classical, formal Arabic and things like that, right? But I did ask him a question. I actually asked him two questions, but relative to our discussion, there's one question that I asked him. And I asked him, what are the keys to learning the Arabic language? And he told me something that I've never forgotten, and I teach this to all of my Arabic students. And it seems so simple, but it's so profound. He said, and this is in no particular order: reading, writing, speaking, listening. He said, do these four things. The more you do these four things, the better you'll get at these four things. The more you read, the better you'll get at reading. The more you write, the better you get at writing. The more you speak, the better that you get at speaking. The more you listen, the better that you'll get at listening and comprehending what you hear. And that's really profound, as simple as that sounds. But again, it was difficult for me to get into speaking and articulation and expressing yourself. And at least my experience was, I understood more first than I had the ability to speak. And then my ability to speak caught up to my ability to understand. Now, I did witness some students who were there, and it was the opposite for them. And it was kind of odd to me, but it worked for them. Everybody's minds doesn't necessarily work the same way. So there were brothers that they picked up speaking really fast, but they couldn't read. They couldn't read and comprehend. And that was odd to me. It's like, how can you speak but you can't read, right? There were people that were like that. But for me, the understanding of what I was hearing and what I had the ability to read came more strongly and more quickly than my ability to speak. But we have ta'bir, reading and articulation. We also have al-qira'ah. Durusun fil qira'ah. This is reading and comprehension. And it's just that, right? It's learning how to read. There are these passages that are here, and we're reading through them, but we're looking to understand what we're reading. So there are a lot of exercises that we go through throughout this work, and the goal is to make sure we understand what it is that we are reading. We have another lesson, and this one is Durusun fi ta'lim al-kitaba. This is penmanship. Lessons in learning how to write, penmanship. And again, you can see some of my notes here on the back of the book. And even at that time, you can see me writing right in the book. This is real time in class. My notes from this time, from my first semester there. We also have a fifth study in this Quran. They give us this work here. This work is Rubu' Yasin, and it is a portion of the Mus'haf from Surah Yasin, the 36th chapter of the Quran, through Surah Nas. Now, just so that we can understand what's taking place here, in the Arabic program, we do two things. We memorize from the Quran and we read from the Quran. Now, as far as memorization, the Mahad, the Institute of Learning the Arabic Language, Mahad Ta'lim al-Lughat al-Arabiyyah, the Institute of Learning the Arabic Language, only required of us to memorize Juz Amma. That's it, the last 30th of the Quran. And for many of us that had already memorized that before we got there, well then, working through that part of it was fairly easy. So you take advantage of the rest. And in reading, we read through the last 5 juz of the Quran. Okay? The Hizb al-Mufassal, as it is called. And the Hizb al-Mufassal is what the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would most frequently recite in the obligatory prayers, leading the prayers as the Imam in the masjid. And as such, we should do the same if we're implementing his sunnah, but permissible to recite whatever you're going to recite from the Quran. So coming out of the Arabic program, if we take everything that is being given to us, not just what is required of us, we should not be coming out with less than 5 juz of the Quran upon graduating from the Arabic program and matriculating through. Now, the way the Arabic program works is you're not allowed to fail a class. You're not allowed to fail a course. If you fail one course, you have to do the entire semester over again, not just that one class. This is how the Arabic program is. The university or the faculty that you're in is a little bit different, right? We'll get to that when we talk about it, inshallah ta'ala. But if I did not, alhamdulillah, I passed the first semester with flying colors, but if I had failed, let's say, because it was a challenge, the most challenging out of those 5 courses that we had, ta'bir. Let's say that I failed ta'bir. I would have to do everything over again in the second semester, okay? And you get one more shot. You can only fail that level twice. If you fail that level twice, you're out. Got to go home, okay? Now, this is with little exception. Maybe you can find some excuse or give you another chance or something like that, right? We saw that happen, but we also did see people that had to go home. But consideration is given to the state of Islam in the country where you are. I can't remember this brother's name for the life of me. However, there were at least 2 brothers from Venezuela. I want to say there were 3, but in my memory, I only remember 2 of them from Venezuela. One of them, this brother, he had such beautiful character. He has such high energy. He's always smiling and making other people feel well. He had a challenge with the Arabic program. I mean, every level he was failing it and then doing it over again, and then maybe he'll fail it again, or maybe he'll go to the next level and do that one and fail and do that level over again. And he really had a tough time working through this, right? But I believe he eventually did get through. They gave him multiple chances. Like he never got kicked out, because in all of the country of Venezuela, there were only these 2 or 3 people there that are in the entire of the university, the Islamic University of Madinah. So they had a vested interest in making sure that they did push through so that they can be built up as people of knowledge and go disseminate Islam to their people professionally and academically in the land, and spiritually in the land where they're from. So you get some of that too. So we hope this was very beneficial for you, that it gives you insight into what our actual experience was and what your experience will or can be in the Islamic University of Madinah. We'll talk more when we have another opportunity, inshallah ta'ala. Barakallahu feekum. May Allah bless all of you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Wait, don't go anywhere yet. I appreciate you getting to the end of the video. I have a question for you. Do you have a desire in you to become a student of knowledge? Have you wanted to travel overseas or even get into an Islamic university, maybe even the Islamic University of Madinah, but things didn't pan out for you? Maybe you wanted to learn the Arabic language, you learned some or none at all, and you just don't have the access that you need to get into the path of knowledge. Well, I have a gift for you. We have put together a program for you where we give you the experience that we had in the Islamic University of Madinah, the actual courses in the Islamic University of Madinah, remove all the barriers and just give you the experience. You don't have to know Arabic, you don't have to travel overseas, you don't have to get accepted in university. We are calling it the Medina Student Boot Camp. We give you that and so much more. This sounds like you? Click the link below. See you on the other side.